Hare Krishna. Thank you for showing some interest in our topic. Why so much tension around the topic of spiritual culture? So first of all, let me introduce briefly the topic of culture. What is culture? How does culture come about? Basically, culture develops by living a certain worldview through the practical application of a philosophy, an ideology. That's how culture manifests in all different aspects of our daily life. So in this world there's basically two cultures: materialistic culture, spiritual culture. These two cultures have very different underlying worldviews. As we know, materialistic culture is based on the mottos of materialistic life, namely, sense gratification is the goal of life. Out of all sense gratification, sex life is the topmost enjoyment. I am this body, gross body and also subtle body of mind, intelligence, false ego. Materialistic culture is mainly propagating bodily concept, gross and subtle. In fact, it is all about blowing up and feeding the subtle body, the false ego. I am so special, I am so unique, I am the center. So this is what materialistic life and its culture is all about. Also, one more important aspect is there is only one life, therefore no purifying duties. These are the underlying worldviews of materialistic culture. Now, spiritual culture has the opposite underlying worldviews, namely, my relationship with Krishna, that's the goal of life. Therefore, we minimize sense gratification, we minimize the whole man-woman attraction, and we minimize bodily concept. Understanding I am not this gross body and I'm also not the subtle body. So spiritual culture is all designed to dissolve and subdue the subtle body, especially false ego. So, and of course, another motto is there are many lives, so therefore we have purifying duties which, when we perform them within Krishna consciousness, that will qualify me to get out of this material world. So already now we can see that these two cultures are based on very different underlying principles, and they are also feeding these worldviews back. They're propagating these worldviews. That's what culture does. So we can see very clearly these two cultures are incompatible. They're actually like day and night. Bhagavad Gita 2:69, Krishna explains what is day to the materialist is night to the introspective sage. So we can visualize it. On one hand is the day of the materialist, on the other hand is the day of the spiritualist. In between is a broad spectrum of all kinds of shades and grades and mixtures. So Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about that transformation, that the day of the materialist eventually becomes the night for us. That's what Krishna consciousness is all about. We are meant to transform our likes and dislikes, our tastes, our patterns of behaviors, our worldviews, everything, ultimately the heart. If this is not happening in Krishna consciousness, then our spiritual practice is rather external. It is very superficial. In fact, we can say we are committing the 10th offense of chanting the holy name. We are maintaining material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. So this is what Krishna consciousness is all about. It is all about a transformation which cannot be imposed and forced onto people. It can only be inspired. I want to share one little example which makes it very clear how these two cultures are like day and night. even within ISKCON. Some 10-12 years ago, I was traveling in Bangladesh. I was very sick. I had typhoid fever and I had to be admitted to a hospital. This happened in the yatra of Silat. So now the temple president of the temple in Silat, a very senior brahmachari, he is now on the list of taking sannyas. He insisted that he would stay with me in the same room in the hospital. That would be a scandal anywhere else outside of spiritual culture. But in Bangladesh, where spiritual culture is still so prominent up to this very day, there that was right. But in other countries where spiritual culture is not there anymore so much, this would be wrong. So the principle of protection of a woman in spiritual culture is the highest principle. It is above the principle of brahmachari life. So this is just a little example to illustrate how these two cultures are indeed like black and white, like day and night. Whatever is day and right in one place can be completely wrong and night in another place. So now let us quickly understand why this topic of culture is bringing about so much tension in our ISKCON society, because as we know, on all levels there is a lot of tension. So this comes about because we are trying to approach this topic in terms of what's right and what's wrong, what black and white. But Krishna consciousness is not right and wrong. It is not black and white. It is all about transformation. That's where we are going wrong, that we are trying to establish what a woman should do and not do, or what a man should do and not do. But as it is a gradual transformation, whatever is right on one end may be wrong on the other end. Or whatever was right 10 years ago might be now hopefully wrong, because maybe we have transformed in these 10 years. So our philosophy, of course, that is absolute, but the application depends very much on how much people have made that transformation already, individually or collectively. In this world, we can observe that there's many places where spiritual culture is still prominent. In other places, it has been completely pushed aside by materialistic culture. It is very much connected with the standard of life. The higher the standard of life is, the more easily sense gratification becomes the goal in life, the more materialistic culture sets in, the more spiritual culture is pushed aside. So in countries like Eastern Europe or even Southern Europe, India, Bangladesh, there is still more spiritual culture there. But then in other countries, it is almost lost and forgotten. So now one important thing is, spiritual culture has universal underlying principles. And we have to recognize and deeply understand these universal principles. Because let us assume that Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement is meant to be a spiritual movement. We are meant to be a spiritual organization which is based on the principles of spiritual culture. Unless we recognize these universal principles of spiritual culture, very easily we lose them in the name of reformation, in the name of modernizing. And that actually has happened in all other spiritual cultures. In Christianity, 50 or 100 years ago, there was still so many more principles of spiritual culture there. But because the leaders of Christianity did not recognize them as the universal principles, that's why they are lost and forgotten. And that will lead to watering down the whole content. Then we lose the spiritual power. So therefore my humble wish and suggestion is that these principles of spiritual culture have to be systematically taught. The devotees have to receive training and education so that they ongoingly can be inspired to move towards the day of the spiritualist, because that's what Krishna consciousness is meant to bring about. And just the fact how much we are struggling in understanding and accepting spiritual culture actually shows that we are not quite there yet in living our philosophy. Because as we were saying, culture comes about by living a certain worldview. So as long as spiritual culture is so foreign to us, it actually means we are still holding on to the materialistic worldviews, and we have not quite made that transformation. So to finish off, I would like to share with you one little quote from Srila Prabhupada. This is in a lecture in Los Angeles, 16th of December 1968. Prabhupada did not want us to adopt American ways of life. After a Bhagavad Gita lecture, Srila Prabhupada was asked if he was in this world. He replied, "Just like I am in America, it is very easy to understand. I am not adopting any ways of life as the Americans. So I am not in America. Not only myself, all my disciples who are following me, they are also not Americans. They are different from American behavior, American ways of life. In that sense, I'm not in America. I am in Vrindavan because wherever I go, in my apartment or in my temple, I live with Krishna and Krishna consciousness. I don't accept any consciousness of America. And I teach my disciples also to take to that consciousness. So one who takes to that consciousness, he is also not in America, not in this world." So this is a very nice quote, where clearly Prabhupada illustrates how we have to transform this materialistic or American consciousness into Vrindavan consciousness, and by living it, we get the culture. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.